Hey everyone, I'm back with Chris and Dom, and we're going to go through the Doors. And I don't mean like go through a door. We're talking about the band, the Doors, and it's probably going to be at least a 2-part discussion and presentation, maybe even a part 3. So today is part 1, and welcome Dom and Chris, and you guys take it away.
Hi, Mike. Great to be back again.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
It's good to see you guys. Yeah.
The Ashes presentations that we did going back May in the summer were quite epic, weren't they? Quite a long podcast, but we've done an addendum as well with Matt Sergiu. Some of the stuff, yeah. So if you want, when I finish that, I'll send it over to you if you want to have a look at releasing that. Because there's some stuff that he's got that we haven't put in ours that I didn't have. So
okay, send it to me as long as Matt doesn't mind me uploading.
Matt won't mind. No.
Okay, great. Yeah, send it to me. I'll put it up.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 hours long. So
okay, that's great.
It'd be a good one. Ashes addendum. But yeah, and this I reckon is going to go in some similar areas. I would have thought. I want to start with a video. It's an audio recording that I put together, a little video. Some of these videos, by the way, probably won't be able to go on YouTube. We're going to have to use them on Rumble, so I'll do 2 different cuts.
Okay.
One because I put them on my YouTube channel. There's copyrights on them. You can still play them, but you know what YouTube are like. They like to turn it off after 2 years or what have you if you've got too much steam on it. But what I thought was if I could play this video about Aldous Huxley talking about his trips on mescaline back in, I think this was 1961, where he was being interviewed. It's an edited version of that interview, but it's quite interesting because obviously the Doors were called after the Doors of Perception.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll play that now just to get us off and running.
How often have you taken mescaline yourself?
I've taken mescaline twice and lysergic acid about 5 times, I suppose. I would like to take it about once a year, I think. But one doesn't. Most people that I know who've taken it have no desire to sort of fool with it and take it constantly. I mean, the thing, you take it too seriously to behave in this way towards it. You wouldn't want to wallow in it. I mean, you need a good deal of time to digest this, I think. I mean, I don't know. Most people I know feel it don't have any special desire to go on taking it. I mean, they would like to take it every 6 months or every year or something of that kind. But I still have to meet one who wants to take it constantly.
But isn't it a condition one would want to be in all the time?
You couldn't be in it all the time because it is, so to say, beyond the level of biological efficiency. The world becomes so extraordinary and so absorbing that you couldn't cross the street without considerable risk of being run over. And you wouldn't want to do anything else because just experiencing this thing is so extraordinary.
Is the effect the same on everyone?
Statistically, about 70%, 75% probably get a good and positive, happy result from it. A certain percentage get no results, and a certain percentage get very unpleasant and hell-like results out of it, get very frightened. Mine were always positive. I didn't have what some people have, which is a great elaborate visions with the eyes closed. Some people have the most elaborate and circumstantial visionary experiences. With the eyes closed, I merely see sort of living geometries, but never any of these great landscapes and figures and architectures which some people see.
Do you sit or do you move about?
You spend a lot of time sitting quietly, looking at things, and getting these sort of strange metaphysical insights into the world.
Is it a habit-forming drug?
In most cases, it has no more hangover than 2 cocktails, and some people feel actually much better the next day.
So yeah, I thought I'd use that to kick us off with, because that basically is telling the story of how they introduce mescaline into the system and the effects that it can have. Imagine, he's saying he wouldn't take it all the time, but people were taking it all the time in the 60s, weren't they?
Yeah, in fact, when I was listening to it, what was the date, 1961?
61, yeah.
Yeah, so that's 6 years before the Summer of Love. and the Monterey Pop Festival when they were handing it out like candy. So when I was listening to this, I'm thinking they were experimenting with it, obviously, way before it emerged in the public.
I mean, the book, The Doors of Perception, was the early 50s, and we're going to come on to that in a little bit. One of his friends, Dr. Humphrey Osmond, he looked like he worked with the intelligence services within Britain as well, experimenting on these substances. But don't you think that a lot of these people, like Huxley, is one of these characters like Bertrand Russell, and seemingly on the side of the public, giving awareness to all these things, but in reality, they're also part of the cultural changes that are going on at the same time.
Their job, to me, was to introduce the topic into the culture, into the society, so that a discussion can be started, and it gets people acclimated. So it's just another form of conditioning.
Yeah, and it makes the people like Jim Morrison and the Doors like cultural Manchurian candidates. But their hits come without bullets, if you like. You know what I mean? It's like they're placed there to do an assassination on the public, in effect.
Yes. Yep. Music is a very, very powerful force to alter behavior and to condition people's minds. It's a big, big tool in their toolbox.
Quite odd to hear a guy as posh as him talking about getting off his head on LSD and mescaline on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, but yeah.
Also, I mean, he's actually discussing what, like Mike said, what's going to go on in the next 7 or 8 years at these concerts. But yeah, anyway. So I'll set this presentation up. So this guy's a guy called Christopher Paget Mayhew. And this plays into the work. If you remember in the Ashes presentation we did, a guy called Dr. William Sargent, who was a friend of Ewan Cameron, and worked under direction of Sidney Gottlieb at MK Ultra. He was the British arm, probably running the show, actually, more than the US side, because it was the British invasion after all, weren't it? Right. And this guy here is an intelligence operative. So Christopher Mayhew here became Baron Mayhew, and he experimented on a program called Panorama, which is a BBC program, and he was given mescaline in the 1950s on a TV show. And I'll play this short. It
says
video.
1955 there.
1955, yeah. So now we're discussing an intelligence operation at least 10 years in advance of what actually happened. Because both of these two people are school boyfriends. So the Dr. Humphrey Osmond went to the same school as Christopher Mayhew. Christopher Mayhew was, I'm going to come on to him in a little bit, but he was he set up an intelligence department for the British government.
Well, here I am in my home, and before I take the drug, Dr. Osmond's got one or two quite unrehearsed questions. I have no idea what they are to put to me.
Right, Christopher.
Carry on.
Could you tell me the date today, please?
The date?
Yes.
It was Friday, the 2nd of December.
In 1955, Christopher Mayhew, MP and TV presenter, took mescaline under the supervision of Humphrey Osmond. The BBC filmed the experiment. This is the first time it's been shown.
To be rich and prosperous, a nation must have a safe, secure supply of wood.
After initial psychological tests, the experiment began at noon.
Well, shall we go right ahead then?
I'll take it.
Yes, there she is.
Well, I'm feeling perfectly fit at the moment, and as sane as I ever am, and I'll take the drug now.
An hour and a half later, there were definite effects.
Could you perhaps tell us any particular colour which you think...
Yes, there's colour just behind Tubby there.
Yes.
It's this colour of... damn, I warned you, Humphrey, that on colours my vocabulary is bad.
Are you talking about the reddish curtain behind Tubby?
Yes, and in fact it has the most extraordinary gradations of mauve and and lights. Sorry, this is just my own poverty vocabulary. I can't describe it.
Would it surprise you if I said it looked to me a rather dullish red curtain, which has very few...
Eventually I'll be amused someday. Yes.
Now, who would you feel in this situation? Whose judgment would you feel sonder?
Now you're asking me, this is the $64 question, whether I'm seeing the curtain more nearly as it is, or whether I am intoxicated and seeing pink elephants, which is, of course...
So, who were these people? That show was never broadcast, right? Probably a little bit too early in the planning, but this shows generational forward planning. And it includes future Prime Minister Boris Johnson in this as well. And I'll tie that up in a second. In the experiment, Baron Mayhew was given 400 milligrams of mescaline hydrochloride, similar to LSD, under the instruction of British psychiatrist Dr. Humphrey Fortescue Osmond. Christopher Mayhew was a major in the British Intelligence Corps, and after World War II, he became an MP for the Labour Party and was elevated to Baron Mayhew. Mayhew founded the Information Research Department, or the IRD, an intelligence wing of the UK Foreign Office, dedicated to Cold War propaganda. So the guy taking the LSD founded a Cold War intelligence office.
Right.
My alarm bells are ringing already. The department apparently was closed down by another New World Order operative, an MP called David Owen. Now, he was also a baron as well. And Owen, aka Baron Owen, who was also a doctor, but guess who he trained under in the 1960s? None other than Dr. William Sargent. So even the person closing the department down of this intelligence worked under the same psychiatric teams that were running the LSD torture treatments in the 1950s and 60s. And if you remember, we thought Dr. Richard Asher worked for William Sargent. We've got sort of written evidence that Asher worked underneath him in the training. He was part of that training while he pre-McCartney living at his house. So both Osmond and Mayhew were best friends, and they were educated at the Aylesbury College. The Aylesbury College used to be called the East India Company College.
Oh, really?
So it was a military training school back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah. So Osmond administered mescaline to Aldous Huxley in 1953. So that interview with Huxley was 61, but in 1953, he administered mescaline to Huxley as part of his research for the doors, or the writing of the Doors of Perception. We're going on a long time, Mike, wasn't it?
It is a long time. I'm just thinking, like I said, The Summer of Love was 1967, and we're going now back to 1953.
And I suppose the big thing is that coined the term psychedelic.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he's the man that came up with the actual word psychedelic. So
see, this just shows the planning, right, Chris? And this really, I mean, we're just like 10 minutes into this, and we can already see the level of planning.
It almost seems like that snip you just showed them is they were maybe testing it out and seeing how it went before they broadcasted it, and then realised it probably wasn't worth broadcasting. We'll hold on to the reveal for a while. Do you know what I mean? Because he didn't really deliver anything, did it? Other than him doing it on TV. I don't know what they wanted him to do. They were probably just testing the water, weren't they? If you imagine they know what they're doing, but they don't know how to go about selling it to the teenagers, do they? So they're working it out as they go along, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So it just looks like two middle-aged guys getting themselves lathered up. And but you're right. The message as far as how do we take this and move it to the young people? How do we sell it to the young generation?
He will have started with his book, with the Doors of Perception.
I'd say as well, do you know, like 2020, they couldn't have launched 2020 without the iPhone, without social media, etc. Probably in the 60s, they were waiting for a similar type of technology or a similar type of mindset, i.e. all the bands, the explosion of the bands and jet travel and things like this, to be able to insert it into culture. And the Vietnam War, maybe.
They didn't have the vehicle yet to deliver it.
Hence why they tried to do it with the book. Because these posh crusties probably thought, Well, a good old book will do it, but not in reality. Teenagers weren't going to read his book by a posh English guy, are they? No. Really?
And also, they had to have access to the drug, didn't they? It had to be readily available to them, and they needed the music, the frequencies, and the drug together, because that's what they were experimenting with, weren't they? The frequencies and the drug and the hypnotic nature. I mean, that's your world, Mike, isn't it?
Yes.
So how important was Dr. Humphrey Osmond? Well, he served as a psychiatrist in the British Navy during World War II, and after his service, he began conducting research into the use of hallucinogenic drugs to treat mental illness and substance abuse. Via his friend, Alfred Hubbard, the Johnny Appleseed of LSD, he was linked to MKUltra by supplying Hubbard with mescaline. Captain Hubbard worked for the Canadian Special Services, the US Justice Department, and the US Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and the OSS, the predecessor of the CIA. And he also went on to work for MKUltra and in MKUltra operations as well, did Hubbard.
Ron Elbert, is that Ron Elbert, the Scientology guy then?
No, that's Alfred Hubbard.
All right, sorry.
Yeah. It said that Hubbard introduced more than 6,000 influential people to LSD, including scientists, politicians, intelligence officials, diplomats, church figures, and friend Leary. So he worked with Leary and was drafted into the United States Army and received basic training at Fort Eustis. And he was commissioned and enrolled into the psychological subsection of the Army Specialized Training Program. I mean, again, Mike, where does this fit into music culture? All of this is military training, psychiatric training, but yet all of this was plugged into the 1960s, weren't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so what it tells you is that the military-industrial complex and the deep state, it plugs in because they created the counterculture. That's what happened. And it's interesting, we're talking about this, the LSD. I remember reading an article going back, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago. And there was a number of articles on this where they were saying that the Silicon Valley gurus were microdosing LSD. And because of that, it elevated their level of creativity. Now, I don't know if that's the case at all, but to me, it was more propaganda that was being disseminated to keep LSD relevant and to acclimate the public that, hey, taking something like that, if it's in the right dosage, could be very beneficial. Now, whether it is or not, I don't know. But it's kind of the same thing where you've got these people, they're looking to introduce the drugs into society, and they're doing all the table setting and the setup in order to do that. And like we were saying before, in order to do that, they needed the proper vehicles in order to get it out there. In the case of the counterculture and the rock bands and all that stuff, that was perfect. That was perfect because it was all about, the counterculture was all about sex and drugs and
obviously against. The pill needed to be inserted into that dynamic and what have you, the contraceptive pill.
Yeah.
But also, it's Timothy Leary, by the way, that I'm talking about there. Him and Jim Morrison had a significant connection because Jim Morrison played a benefit concert for Timothy Leary in 1970 as well. And a lot of the counterculture people was there. Allen Ginsberg, Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon, Yoko Ono were all there at this benefit concert. So, I mean, Timothy Leary was a well-known CIA operative. Am I right there?
Yes. Yep. And, so when you're talking about Yoko Ono and Allen Ginsberg, you're talking about the avant-garde and the beat movement, right? Yeah. So you've got that whole influx of that. It's kind of that hedonistic, everything goes type of approach. Mindset. So it doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, I mean, even the Yoko Ono and John Lennon sleep-ins that they did, one was in Amsterdam, but the one they did in Montreal was right next door to where Ewan Cameron did all his experimentation.
Yeah.
At the university. The actual hotel was right there. I looked up on the map where it was. It was more or less in the campus.
Yeah, we could call it coincidence, or we could say that, all this stuff is plugged in.
Yeah.
To a lot of these people, a lot of the things that they do have symbolic importance. And
I think some of the things, I mean, even as where our minds go to sometimes, we can't even begin to think of what sort of meetings these people have and what spells they're casting for future generations.
No. The average person has no idea.
No. Dr. Osmond wrote a letter to Aldous Huxley, and he said, it was like a catchphrase, to fathom in hell or soar angelic, just take a hit of psychedelic. That must be in his book. That's that meaning mind manifesting or casting a spell. That's what mind manifesting is. So he published this book, did Humphrey Osmond, Psychedelics, in 1970, I do believe. So just going back to that BBC Panorama programme, what I found interesting, this guy was probably the producer at that point. He took over very early on as a producer. And this guy's called Sir Charles Cornelius Wheeler, proper English name, that, isn't it? And he was the early Panorama producer with his wife. And his daughter is a lady called Marina Wheeler, and she's the ex-wife of Boris Johnson. And she's now working for Keir Starmer in his government.
Oh, wow.
So also Baron Mayhew, right, the guy who took the LSD in that BBC Panorama programme, was best friends with Anne Simmons, the grandmother of Carrie Simmons, who's Boris Johnson's new wife.
See, there are going to be people listening to the show right now that it's all coincidence, right?
Yeah.
No, it is not all coincidence. It's very inbred. It's a tight-knit network. And like George Carlin said, it's a big club and we're not in it.
Yeah. Anne Simmons, which is Carrie Simmons' grandmother, was also an intelligence operative. She worked for the Ministry of Information, working under the tutelage of Arthur Gore, the 8th Earl of Arran, who I believe is related to Al Gore. But I haven't gone into that side of it, but I believe he's related to Al Gore. She was thought to be the illegitimate daughter of Prime Minister H.H. Asquith, the 1st Earl of Oxford and Asquith. But anyway, all these people are intertwined with the intelligence operations, the Masonic brotherhoods, and all sorts of things. Even Dennis Healey was a famous politician over here. All three of them were friends, Mayhew, Simmons, and they all went to Oxford together. And they were all what we call thick as thieves. But they all worked for the intelligence operatives. Anne Simmons, Mayhew, and Dennis Healey all worked for the British intelligence. But also George Orwell's first wife, Eileen O'Shaughnessy, also worked for the Ministry of Information, which we've just mentioned there. But then if you look at George Orwell, he also worked for the Information Research Department. George Orwell was a definite intelligence operative, if he was still alive after the Spanish Civil War, that is. But that's a totally different podcast, that, Mike. But but interestingly, one of the people that worked in the Ministry of Information, actor Daniel Day-Lewis, aka Sir Daniel Day-Lewis, his father, Cecil Day-Lewis, CBE, he worked for the Ministry of Information. So his father worked there.
Yeah.
So
it goes back to Mark Devlin's book.
No One's Dad's a Plumber. Yeah.
No One's Dad's a Plumber.
So guess who Charles Wheeler, this guy, worked for during World War II in British intelligence? None other than James Bond's writer, Ian Fleming.
Okay.
It looks a bit James Bond-esque, doesn't
it? Yeah. And do you know what? I'm going to veer off a little bit, Mike, if you want. There's an interesting... can you remember that story I told about Ian Fleming going to that secret psychiatrist clinic in Austria, Chris? So anyway, I'll tell it, actually. Ian Fleming. Here we go. The story goes that Ian Fleming was a real-life David Niven character whilst at Oxford. He used to have his cigarette holder like that. He liked to drink and he liked the ladies a little too much for his mother's liking. So in 1927, to prepare Fleming for a possible entry into the Foreign Office, his mother sent him to Tennerhof in Kitzbühel, Austria, to a small private school run by the Alderian disciple and former British spy Ernest Forbes Dennis and his novelist wife, Phyllis Bottom.
Yeah, again, it's all in the family, right?
But the Flemings owned a bank. I don't know if you know this, Mike. The Fleming Bank was sold for $7.5 billion. But yeah, in late 2000, late 90s. So that's another story again. But Phyllis Bottom studied individual psychology under Alfred Adler while in Vienna, and Ernest Forbes was a British diplomat working firstly in Marseille and then in Vienna as a passport control officer. But this was just a cover for his real role as MI6 head of station, with the responsibility of Austria, Hungary, and Yugoslavia.
And you know what's really interesting too? I was thinking about this as you were speaking, Dom. They create movies like James Bond. What they're really talking about, they're actually glorifying their own lives. Mm-hmm. Right? They're actually storytelling. I mean, it's exaggerated storytelling, maybe, about their lives.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, there's so many. Who's the horror actor, Chris, that I keep talking about?
Christopher Lee.
So Christopher Lee was Fleming's cousin.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lee was apparently part of the writing of James Bond because he was an intelligence operative in World War II as well. And after World War II. But these people then might go on to be famous people, authors, actors, MPs, diplomats, whatever, in their own right. But in reality, they never lose that skill or connection back to British intelligence. It's impossible to.
Yeah, no. It's all connected back into that structure.
And this is Forbes Dennis. Interesting, the Alfred Adler, who was it was a little bit before, obviously, all the psychedelics and the meditation and schools that they used to run, but it's run on very similar lines, was the Adler methods. He was a friend of Freud and Jung. And when we get to the next part 2 of The Doors, I found that Jim Morrison's related to Jung. Carl Jung. Yes. So he was one of the 3. This guy is one of the 3 founding figures in psychology, which emphasizes the unconscious and psychodynamics. He's also considered by some to be one of the greatest psychologists and philosophers of the 21st century, and yet we've never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
Alfred Adler. Anyway. This is Peter Fleming's brother. This is when he died, he was buried in a church, and they're the stained glass windows representing the tree of life that they put in the church.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
How many owls do you need? So for me, the Doors are straight out of a 60s intelligence. We're probably going to upset people with this podcast. I'm sorry if we do, but straight out the textbook of an operation for me. But they also had military. They had military intelligence training. They pushed the culture of the LSD, weed, heroin as well. And at least 2 of the band members had very, very, very royal lineages, as we'll come on to. But what I wanted to establish here, and we haven't even talked about the Doors yet, is the depth of the operation. Right, I'm going to play that Doors trailer that Chris were on about, actually. The Doors film. I think it's important that we look at what some of the things around the Doors were written, and who was playing in the film, who wrote the film, or who produced it and directed it, and what their backgrounds are as well, because they're very close ties to all of the other people that we've just mentioned.
Everybody in. Ceremony is about to begin.
Name, occupation.
Jim. Things are about to explode. You can feel it in the air. Planet is screaming for change, Morrison. We gotta make the myths.
I'm the Lizard King! I can do anything! Morrison. I'd like to go make a record.
Sure, why not?
Jim Morrison, the god of rock.
Know that it would be untrue.
The network have told us that they have a problem with the lyric "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." They asked if you could say, "Girl, we can't get much better."
Girl, we couldn't get much higher.
Yeah!
I love it when you sing to me.
I'm the poet and you're my muse.
You hear them out there? It's you they want now.
They don't want me, they want my death.
You're a poet, not a rock star.
Mr. Morrison, gone too far. The show's over.
What are you gonna do about it?
Try to set the night on fire. Try to set the night on fire.
Go on, kill me.
The night on fire. Try to set the night on fire.
You went to watch that, I reckon, Chris.
I did. I saw it when it came out.
I did too.
Yeah, and I've been watching numerous documentaries on just YouTube stuff, just mainstream stuff as well. And one of the things you got from most things I saw listened to, was he wasn't that bad. He weren't even that into drugs that much. He was a bit of a drunk, but he'd smoke the occasional joint, even occasionally do a line, but he wasn't into drugs that much. And there's a bit in the film where he screams, get some heroin, but apparently he didn't like heroin, and he used to tell people off for doing it. So he wasn't that into it. And apparently the book it was based on, No One Gets Out of Here Alive, that got a load of stick for portraying him in this like over hedonistic way and being a bit of an asshole. And then when Oliver Stone got it, he rewrote the script, and apparently that was even worse than the book, so it portrayed him even worse. And Ray Manzarek was apparently furious about the film. I think one of the reasons is they reckon he wanted to direct it, and then Oliver Stone got the gig. But the other two band members, they were involved in the film as well, and they said a lot of it was fabrication. Like the bit, I remember the bit when they meet on the beach, on Venice Beach, and they meet. But apparently at that period of time, there was no one on Venice Beach. It was like a ghost town, even according to Jim Morrison. And the guy who was telling Oliver Stone, there's no one here. Why you've made it all this like hazy, glamorous, all these hippies hanging out on the Venice Beach. It didn't exist. There was no one there. But he said things like that he quit UCLA, to make him a bit more dramatic. But apparently he left college with honours. He weren't a dropout.
That's a small discrepancy.
I'm a dropout. But they had to make up this. You can even tell from that trailer, can't you? The way they, all spinning around and they were reinventing the drug culture. And it was the 90s as well. That was the second Summer of Love, wasn't it? That's when they were reinventing it all for.
Well, they also flash across the screen genius. They always use the word genius. Yeah. So they're depicting a lot of dysfunction. And you're supposed to look at that dysfunction, and you're supposed to think that that's what a genius does. A genius creates this chaos and this dysfunction and his drugs and his booze. So it's very interesting.
Most people said he was a nice guy. He was quite softly spoken, quite a pleasant character. That's the impression I got anyway from numerous things I was watching about him. But they were also annoyed with the fact that in the film he was going around quoting poetry all the time. And they said he never did that. They make him out to be like this poet who just goes to and a lot of the lines in the film were made up by Oliver Stone for dramatic effect. A lot of the poetry lines and stuff.
It's myth building.
Yeah.
They actually told you it were a myth. Let's make a myth. That's what they actually said in that trailer.
One thing I did see that shocked me, surprised me, should I say? They mentioned the Gulf of Tonkin of his dad in that, right. And I didn't know that. I thought McGowan was the first one to start talking about that. But I heard the audio of it, and he's a bit where but it's really subtle. It's a bit where he gets off with a groupie in a toilet kind of thing, and she goes, "Oh, your dad were in charge of the Gulf of Tonkin." I don't remember that bit in the film, and he didn't show.
No, I don't remember that either.
I didn't see the visual. I just heard an audio. So, but I don't know. It sounded like it was from the film. I'll have to find out. But I was surprised if it was. But then I watched a few more mainstream documentaries, if you like, about him, and it was interesting because there was one, and it was called The Conspiracy Show, and it was put out about 6 years ago. And you know, one of those conspiracy shows, you've got them in America. We've had them over here where they give you all the the reasons it's a conspiracy. Then at the end they debunk it all at the last minute, and then you're like, all right, we're back to square one kind of thing. But the old conspiracy was about whether he's alive or dead. He didn't really go into whether he's manufactured or nothing to do with military. They even mentioned the Gulf of Tonkin thing. And if you think that was 6 years ago, I think they were rebranding him after the McGowan stuff of saying, it was a common knowledge that his dad were Gov. But they also made out that he used to say his dad was dead, which is true. But he said he fell out with his dad and he didn't want his dad.
He's only just died, His dad's only just died.
Has it?
Yeah.
In that documentary, they make out that his dad disowned him because he wanted to join the Doors. I don't know how true that is. But then he said something weird. He said he stood in the way of his dad's promotions by joining the Doors. So that doesn't balance out. And then they said his dad sent agents to find him and stuff. So you're like, what?
Well, you can't find him on Ed Sullivan show.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to me, Jim Morrison was groomed and handled to play that part.
Oh, yeah.
They look like the Backstreet Boys of 1960, whatever it was. That's what they look like.
The point was, mate, the conspiracy show just, all it questioned was whether he was dead or alive. He didn't go into anything else. He mentioned the Gulf of Tonkin, then it covered that up with the fact that he had an argument with his dad and they fell out and his family didn't want what to do with him. But they didn't go into anything else. That was it. And the conclusion was nothing really. So it was like a nothing conspiracy show, if you like.
I remember seeing images of Jim Morrison. This is going back years ago, where before he was in the Doors and the whole Laurel Canyon scene, he was this clean-cut kid.
Yeah. Even that clip when it showed, him getting off the plane and he walks up, I'm Jim, and then all the band members walk up one by one and they're all hippified. It showed I saw the original one side by side and they look pretty geeky. They walk up, hi, I'm Jim. They're not like, Air Floyd and all the shirts open. And apparently he only took his shirt off like once and only wore leather trousers for like a year. But they just make out he's like this floaty, like.
You think that's the way he woke up and dressed every day? Yeah. The way they promoted him.
And apparently he was a bit of a drunk, more than a drug-taking fiend. He was a crap drunk, I think. That's the impression I got. He got drunk and he'd get a bit leery, but not to the level that it shows.
But what we'll see, that biopic there with Oliver Stone contains some interesting actors who played, Val Kilmer, who played Jim Morrison, and Kyle MacLachlan, who played keyboardist Ray Manzarek, and Kevin Dillon as the drummer, played John Densmore. And John Densmore's bloodlines, I was saying this off camera, Matt, before we started, his bloodlines are off the charts. And you wouldn't have expected it being John Densmore. But Billy Idol was in it as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. He had a lot of cameos.
What we worked out though, Chris, as well, is that film resurrected and reinserted the Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception into the 90s. Well, into the 90s generation, which in this country we'd had the Second Summer of Love with the acid and then ecstasy. Yeah, with house music.
Well,
the smiley face and everything.
You know what I was going to say, Dom? They re-released the book around that time with Jim Morrison kind of cover, with Val Kilmer kind of cover on it. And I remember at the time, not really, because I didn't really rate the film, Mike. I don't know if you did at the time or even when I saw it. I thought, yeah, it was all right. I thought the wigs were quite bad. They looked a bit poor. But I remember at the time, so you're talking 91, and I'm going into 94 when I moved away from Yorkshire, I moved out of London. The amount of people that came up saying, have you read this book? And it was Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception. Because they'd watched the film, the book had a resurgence. Honestly, I can name about 3 or 4 friends saying to me, have you read this? It's amazing. Doors of Perception, that's where the name of the band came from. That's how I found that out. But it definitely worked. He definitely rejuvenated that book and the Aldous Huxley story. And the Doors, without a doubt.
Well, it's interesting because Oliver Stone, following on from what you were talking about, Chris, with Dave McGowan's work, Stone's no different. And a lot of these directors and producers, Mike, that me and Chris have looked into, all of them have got similar backgrounds to the actual stars that are in the films. Oliver Stone and was born to Jacqueline Goddett and Louis Stone, whose actual name was Silverstein. So he was called Abraham Louis Silverstein was his dad. They changed the name, apparently, because of rampant anti-Semitism in the US.
Yeah, crypto.
Yeah, crypto. Stone's parents met in his mother's own town in Paris. So Louis Stone, Oliver Stone's dad, was on active duty. He was a US Army colonel on active duty in France, serving as the financial officer to General Eisenhower directly.
Okay.
So he would have been passed for D-Day official secrets, like as well. So yeah, look, Louis, that's Oliver Stone in Vietnam.
Did everyone get the picture taken like that when they were in Vietnam?
Probably.
Nice black and white one coming out of what?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, like the one on the right especially looks completely staged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
just
his hair looks too neat in a war zone.
Well, that looks like a...
So I'm convinced that they do a lot of backstory staging before these guys reach a point where they become like a household name.
Yeah.
So there's a development of a backstory to create a history. Because I'm looking at that image on the right, I'm thinking, that's not a candid shot.
No.
No.
Especially in a war zone.
Yeah.
When cameras work around like they are today as well. What's your opinion of Oliver Stone, you guys, just out of interest? What's your opinion about it? Because he's got a very interesting filmography career, I think. He almost, to me, when you look through his films, he seems like, I remember once seeing Clint Eastwood say, I make one for the studio, i.e. the system, and I can, or two for the system, then I can make one for myself. And his filmography almost seems like that. I mean, he made JFK, wherever you think of that. We're obviously a multi-million-dollar film, so if he wasn't allowed to make it, he wouldn't have been able to make it, would he, about JFK? So he's telling a story. So on the surface, he's like a conspiracy director, but then he went on to make the one about 9/11. Then he went on to make the one about what's that guy called? The one who exposed everything in America. What
they call him? Snowden.
He made a film about Snowden, and he's still selling. He's selling the official story of Snowden. He's selling the official story of 9/11. I don't know, but then he goes and meets Hugo Chavez to talk about how America's persecuted. Very, very, very strange. I mean, he's the conspiracy director, if there is one, from America, isn't it?
He's controlled opposition. It's
the pseudo conspiracy director.
Exactly. I mean, he's introducing topics that are conspiracy, and that's just to get a version of the story out there that differs from the official narrative, but it's very controlled.
Yeah, even his Vietnam story is that he was upper middle class, but he wanted to go and see what all the poorer people were suffering because he felt bad for them. I mean, they even portrayed that in Platoon, didn't they?
Yeah, you don't become an Oliver Stone by just climbing the rungs on the ladder. I mean. These people are identified early on. They are handled and groomed and developed to move along the path until they get to a point where they're in the position that they are expected to play. And, I mean, I'm not going to say that Oliver Stone's movies aren't entertaining. They are, but there's a difference between something being entertaining and something being truthful.
Yeah. And I don't see the point in making a biography if it's not.
If it's bullshit.
Yeah, I can't watch a film that's a biography because it's not true. The new ones they've done of Queen and all that, none of them are real. So there's kind of no point. And I do believe he wrote Scarface. And I've said to Don before, when you watch Scarface, everyone like, oh yeah, Tony Montana, so cool. But he was literally an evil drug pusher.
Right.
But that film, I believe, was brought to basically advertise cocaine in the early 80s, because not long after that, it became a massive thing. And I think it was used to push the drug.
Well, that made it cool, didn't it? Like we're talking now about LSD in the 60s. Also, his dad, Louis Stone, worked after World War II, was a stockbroker and an investment analyst on Wall Street, and he was vice president of Shearson Lehman Brothers. So, I mean, we're talking big hitters here. We're not talking a small hitting family, if you like.
That's what he based his Wall Street film on, apparently.
Okay.
Okay.
When was the Doors film? It was 91? Is that
91? Yeah.
Yeah. See, I was thinking what they do also is they wait a certain amount of time in order to re-spark that flame to get the people from the 60s counterculture generation. You know, they've gotten older now. It's 25, 30 years later. And I'm convinced what they do is they want to keep them in that space. It's
that
kind of a nostalgic type of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And we see this with the Beatles all the time because they're always introducing, you know, some new release of this, and there's some more movies coming out.
There's a new movie coming out, yeah, apparently.
Yeah, new movie coming out. And what it's aimed to keep that generation.
Keep it relevant,
It's to keep in the minds of that generation, the Doors are still relevant, the Beatles are still relevant. It's to keep them in a certain space and not to grow out of it. You know, I've always said that Tavistock was good at very good at a lot of things, but two things that they're really good at is reducing the critical thinking abilities of an adult to that of a child, to keep it at a very emotional level.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think about it, when you go back to your childhood, the 60s, for those who were during the 1960s period into counterculture, it takes them back there and they reminisce and they think about, oh, you know, San Francisco and this concert and that concert. It just pulls them back in.
Yeah.
And they overfilter it as well. They see a romanticized version of it.
Yes, right. Exactly. It's romanticized.
But
exactly.
But if you put some, they romanticize it. And if you think about when these songs or films are played, generally you're watching them with your family. So when mom and dad get older or they pass away, the kids are going to want to watch them as well because they're nostalgic about the time they had with their parent. They're going to want to listen to the same music the parents listen to,
right?
Because it reminds them. So then they pass it on to that generation so it's constant. It's always constant, isn't it?
Look how excited we were. Me and Don went to see JFK when it came out at the cinema, I believe.
Yeah.
And we were so excited that they'd made a JFK film.
Yes.
You know,
because we still believed in the Hollywood nonsense that they were going to write something true. But even Oliver Stone, it says that he wasn't active duty in Vietnam in an elite 1st Cavalry Division, participating in long-range reconnaissance patrols, just to carry on the military theme.
Yeah.
Right. So he wasn't a grunt like he made out.
No. It was in an elite 1st Cavalry Division.
Right.
He didn't say what he did, just in an elite 1st Cavalry Division.
His whole romantic story version is that he went to be a grunt like the rest, like it's portrayed in Platoon. Martin Sheen. Charlie Sheen plays him, doesn't he?
So we also have to keep in mind that all of this stuff is a form of spellcasting. So when these movies come out or there's re-releases, there's a big splash about something that took place 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's keeping that spell going.
And all his films were always controversial.
Yes.
I was going to say, actually, Dom, that bit about Wall Street, if you think of Gordon Gekko, and Oliver Stone
another lizard.
Yeah. Oliver Stone always says he meant him to be an anti-hero, but then it became a saying in Wall Street, greed is good. So it became an anthem rather than, but he always said, no, it was supposed to, but I don't think it was it? So you're going in the 80s creating this, people turning into arseholes and being really greedy and nasty to each other. And he was part of that, coming up with
part of that culture creation.
Yeah, greed is good. Yeah, that literally was culture creation. Yeah.
I mean, we in some other. I did a presentation, Mike, where I put together all these famous actors and stars who are cousins of assassins, serial killers, and murderers, if you like. And it was interesting to see how many famous Hollywood actors and directors and singers are related to, like, say, Matt Damon. I think he's related to, might be Jeffrey Dahmer, but it's someone like that. But his father was also a stockbroker on Wall Street and a film producer. So that they make out that, and he's a cousin of Ben Affleck.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So him and Ben Affleck are cousins. They're best friends. They act in films together, etc. And so a lot of them have this line running through them that they're related to serial killers. It's a strange phenomenon, but
it's very strange, very creepy.
Yeah, very creepy. Taylor Swift's related to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Really?
Yes, really.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think Mark put it in his book. I found out that they're related, and I found the actual connection that they're related to, the person that they're related to, that follows the same line.
If you go on Dave McGowan's serial killer, but serial killers are just actors anyway, or MKUltra controlled.
That's what I was going to say. I never ever bought that these serial killers were just these lone wolves that became disgruntled and were dysfunctional. Something had to be going on. Yeah, something had to be going on to get these people to be what they became and to do the things that they did.
Yeah.
Well, whether we get to that in this presentation, we're going to find that one of the members of the Doors has a similar story in his background to Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh yeah.
It's like David Berkowitz, and there were researchers that pointed that back to the Process Church.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say a lot of them say they're part of a ring, part of a group. When they get caught, and then, I mean, I think Dave McGowan wrote that book on the back of Henry Lee Lucas, wasn't it? And he was he owned up to loads of murders and serial killers and all kinds of stuff. I forget how many. It was like 50 murders or something stupid he owned up to. And he was the only guy to get let off from the death penalty in Texas by George W. Bush. That's right. Everyone got murdered. No one got away with it except for him. And that's what Dave McGowan said got him to write the book. About the serial killers.
Well, the Bushes pop up in this presentation. That story of Oliver Stone reminded me of Stuart Copeland's dad of the police, his father, Miles Copeland. We've mentioned him before in a couple of podcasts. So Miles Copeland Jr., right? It's not. He's called Junior, by the way. His father was called Senior. He's the father of Stuart Copeland, the drummer in the Police, and he was. Let me get this right. Head of station for the CIA for the Middle East, and the Copelands have a really royal bloodline going back to ancient Welsh kings and Viking kings as well. But Copeland's career, Copeland's career, he was an intelligence asset, and he was part of the CIC, which is the Counterintelligence Corps, and he had the highest echelon clearance on D-Day called Bigot. But the Intelligence Corps I never even heard of the Counterintelligence Corps, but it included so many different people, like politicians and lawyers and judges and people like that then was inserted back into society all over the world. Like one of them was the German Chancellor. Henry Kissinger was one of them. Clint Hill, the guy that supposedly jumped on the back of the limo on JFK's limo, he was part of the counterintelligence organization. These people ran Operation Paperclip, and they were all part of this same thing, then inserted back into the population. And that's why when you say, Mike, that all these people are nurtured, this is like going on what's bloody Simon Cowell's show. It's like going on one of those shows, being handpicked out to be a useful Manchurian candidate for.
There's no question, because you can't achieve these positions without being groomed and handled and brought along. I'm just looking at Copeland. It says Copeland CIA. Copeland joined the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. Well, 1947 was the first year of the CIA. Before that, it was the OSS. So, that tells me that he was in the pipeline. And when they threw the switch to actually create the CIA, he was somebody that was clearly on the radar to recruit and bring in. So that just doesn't happen.
No.
And he was one of only 200 agents.
That's a pretty elite force.
That's pretty elite.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, it reminded me of, Don, when you said about the, then releasing them back into the society, I suppose. It reminded me of the WEF, World Economic Forum.
Young Global Leaders.
Testicle.
Right. Yeah.
In the past, they would never admit that. They would never admit, like with the World Economic Forum, they would say with these young global leaders. And now they've become so brazen that they openly talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you remember that clip of we have infiltrated all? They're just telling you, aren't they?
They're just telling you, and what that's showing you, and what if people would just wake up, they're telling you that these people that we're placing in governments, we developed them. Mm-hmm. We brought them along. We educated them. They have our ideology, and they're going to do our work. So it's very, very important to understand that.
Mm. This reminds you of Spectre and James Bond, as we were saying before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he, when he was Middle East head of station, he was carrying out coup d'etats, assassinations, and his wife was part of the SOE, Special Operations Executive, during World War II, operating behind enemy lines. So this is Stuart Copeland's mum and dad. Both of them were intelligence agents. And then they're in one of the most successful bands of the late 70s, early 80s. In there, I've got a great video of him. I'll play it. It's a minute long. Of him being interviewed. Just look at this guy's eyes, Mike, and tell me.
Okay.
Okay. This is from the 1960s as well. He's just released a book. He's retired from the CIA. If you ever retire from the CIA,
he's got a slight air of arrogance, hasn't
he? Just a bit.
But you see, what bothers me a little about this account, and incidentally, it seems to confirm from the inside many of the people's worst fears about the way in which American policy is conducted. For example, you say that all sorts of things were done in the field, for example, plotting to overthrow the Syrian government and others, without the State Department being very fully informed about what you were up to.
The State Department didn't want to be informed in that particular instance. If it had been informed, it would have to have told us not to do it.
And therefore you didn't inform it?
The State Department practically asked not to be informed in this case. We did inform the State Department, and as you've read the book, you know this case where simply it was hinted to us that we had best shut up about what was happening in the country, and if Hosni Zaim, the case in point, you are talking about
the Syrian case, when you overthrew the Syrian government.
If Hosni Zaim wanted to have a coup, and if his intention was to get rid of the corrupt government and establish a democratic government, we should leave him alone and stay out of it.
And that was the State Department policy, but in fact, you very largely organized, directed it, I mean you personally, but you're among the team who did it, organized and directed this coup.
Exactly.
So, he's actually openly admitting there, but again, I'll say it again, this guy, Stuart Copeland, the drummer in the Police, that's his father, admitting that's one coup that he orchestrated.
Right, and they're saying that, and they did it by just saying, we're going to do it. Oh, they didn't want to know. It's not that they didn't want to know. You didn't tell them, and if they did ask, you told them that we're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to read between the lines with these guys. I mean, people have to realize that this is an internationalist structure.
Yeah.
And there's no, the concept of national boundaries is just something that is given to the general population, right? To something, to create this illusion that that's how it actually works. What he's telling you is, in that short clip, is it doesn't work like that at all. If we want to go in and intervene and we want to go overthrow a government, we're going to go do it. Mm-hmm. We don't care about what your politicians or what they think.
And what's interesting
it's not a vote.
He was talking about overthrowing the Syrian government, which again, it's just repeated itself again recently. The same thing. And they just rinse and repeat whenever they feel like it. So some of the interesting actors, though, Kyle MacLachlan, who played Ray Manzarek, his wife's TV producer of Project Runway, Desiree Gruber. Her father was a Green Beret as well. And he enrolled her in the Reserve Officers Training Corps when she was in college. And she became, apparently, in 2010, one of the most powerful female entrepreneurs, according to Fortune magazine. But Kyle MacLachlan's lineage is from Frankfurt.
Good old Frankfurt.
Yeah, and he's directly related to the Bach family, as in Johann Sebastian Bach.
Okay.
Val Kilmer's another interesting guy. He obviously played. Let me move this on here. He obviously played Jim Morrison, and his Welsh bloodlines go back to King Rodri, King of the Britons, and he is part of the Harleian genealogies. If you remember, we talked about this in the first Asher presentation. It was bought by the Harley family, as in that's why they're called the Harleian genealogies. It's held at the British Library, and it holds all the ancient British genealogies. Oh, that's part of it. The Harleian genealogies is part of the Harleian Library, are a collection of old Welsh genealogies preserved in the British Library, and they're called Harley MS 3859. The collection features the oldest genealogies of Welsh families and include the dynasty of Cwnida and Beli Mwar, all of which is part of the House of Gwynedd, and this guy's related to this. Robert Harley, the first Earl of Oxford, bought the collection that comprises of 7,660 manuscripts and 2,200 illuminated manuscripts. Don't know what that means, but I can imagine. And more than 14,000 original legal documents and 50 rolls. It was assembled by Robert Harley and his son Edward, and it was purchased at the time in 1753 for £10,000. I think I worked out that with compound interest, it was some ridiculous figure that the British government bought it off them for. Well, like billions of pounds it would have been to buy these and hide these things in the British Library. So you can't actually go in and you see these things. It won't let you touch them. Anyway, both Morrison and Kilmer share Charlemagne as the great-grandfather. And we'll come to that in part 2.
Okay.
Or Charmaine. The people always write in and say, you pronounce that wrong, but I'm uneducated, so I don't really care.
It's okay. It happens. And, I like when people call that out too. He said this. Yeah. Okay, well, it's a 2-hour presentation. So once we got past those 2 seconds, what'd you think about the rest of the
show? Interestingly, I think that Jim Morrison, around the time that we were talking about the biopic, the Doors biopic, Michael Hutchence was around the late 80s and 90s as well.
I think he might have been in line to possibly play him. I'm not sure.
You think so?
I think he was, yeah. I might be wrong. I just saw that when I was watching some of these documentaries today, they said about people running, loads of different directors and actors going for the part before he made it, and his face flashed up. So I'm presuming he was around the same time. I'm presuming that he was in a running of some kind. One thing I would say about Jim Morrison, he died at 27. He looks older, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he would have died right then either. So, but I always thought he looked a lot older than what they said he was. In his 20s.
Well, God knows what ringer these lot have been through, Chris.
Well, yeah, there is that, isn't there?
But there's another interesting video of Ray Manzarek, actually, and it's only about 20 seconds long, so I will play that, talking about serpents and things like this, when he's talking about Michael Hutchence. So it's probably around about the same time. This video looks early 90s type-esque when we're talking about that film.
Former Doors keyboardist Ray Manzarek.
First time I saw him was on MTV. I was just completely blown away. Michael reminded me of Jim Morrison. The Australian invasion had happened. They had the reptile, they had the serpent, they had the serpent power.
What's all that about?
Yeah, what's he even talking about?
They had the serpent. I thought that were interesting.
I mean, I think he did base his look on him, didn't he, Michael Hutchence? I think he did act like him from those famous scenes you see of Jim Morrison.
Right.
I would guess.
Anyway, I wouldn't have known this, but pre the Doors, there was a band called Rick and the Ravens, and it was started by Manzarek's brothers and Manzarek. So Rick and the Ravens was an American surf rock and frat band founded in 1961 by Rick Manzarek on guitar, Jim Manzarek on organ and harmonica. So that's Jim Manzarek on organ, harmonica, and Patrick Stonier on saxophone, Roland Biscalouz on bass, and Vince Thomas on drums. Notice there's no mention of Ray Manzarek at this point in 1961. That's because he was in the army. We're going to come to that in a sec. However, Rick and the Ravens is known as the forerunner of the Doors. the name of the band stems from Manzarek's brother, Rick, the original guitarist. So you could say it was the older brother Rick's band. But there is an alternate story that says, while attending DePaul University in Chicago, Ray and his brothers started their own rock band called Rick and the Ravens. The truth is that Ray was at DePaul University in Chicago, then went to UCLA, then went and joined the Army, volunteering to join the Army. He may have joined the band while at DePaul previously. So there's two parts to this. It was in the early 60s, it was in Chicago, and then when he got out of the Army, it ended up in LA. Anyway, whatever the story, he wasn't in the band between 1961 and 1962. He was in the US Army. Having left the Army in 62, Ray Manzarek moved to Los Angeles back to the UCLA, where he had already been before joining up. And he joined the band on vocals and occasional piano. Anyway, he was given the stage name of Screaming Ray Daniels. Rick and the Ravens recorded 3 singles on Aura Records and a demo acetate containing 6 songs that were later re-recorded on the Doors album. The band Rick and the Ravens performed at weekends to college crowds, mostly at UCLA Film School, at a bar called Turkey Joint West on Santa Monica Boulevard, and a British pub by the Santa Monica Soccer Club. Their concert setlist consisted of their own original songs padded out with covered versions of blues standards by Muddy Waters, Richard Berry, and Barrett Strong. In an interview conducted by music reporter stroke fan Rainier Moderman, a German guy, Manzarek stated that the first song Jim performed was with Rick and the Ravens, and he was called Richard Berry's Louie Louie. Was that in the film, Chris? This?
I can't remember. I don't think so. Do you remember?
I don't remember it either. No.
I think they literally met on a beach on Venice Beach.
There's a story to that one as well. You know, there's a story to that.
Yeah, they met on Venice Beach, even though there'd been nobody there, and then they were like, "Let's get a band together," and then that were it, kind of, wasn't it, Mike?
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger there lifting weights.
They're in a garage. They're in a garage then all of a sudden making the band. Yeah, I saw this today actually, Don, when I was watching some docs on YouTube about these guys. I saw that you'd put it in there already.
Yeah,
I didn't take any notes of it.
How old was Ray in 61? Do we know?
I think I've got it further down.
Okay.
He just left DePaul University. The first part of his, so he just left school. I don't know the ages in America for schooling, but
if I remember, Dom, when we did this before, I'm sure you're going to get to it, but you got the impression that Ray was the guy running the show, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. We'll come to that. We'll come to why.
Yeah,
because
say why, but
yeah, Morrison was not officially part of the band at this time. Manzarek asked him or invited his former college friend on stage, much to his brother's surprise, out of the blue. Morrison was reportedly not prepared for this, his first public performance, and sang himself hoarse. So he wasn't prepared. So I heard stories saying he was a reluctant singer, and he wasn't prepared for it, but yet he was able to sing himself hoarse, even though he didn't like singing, apparently. Morrison and Manzarek had previously met and found they shared a lot of musical and artistic interest. Later, Manzarek asked Morrison to join the band, and he accepted, even though it wasn't his band. We'll come to how they met, but there are loads of different stories as to how they actually got the band together. And that's, Manzarek's actually got a website of his own, Ray Manzarek, even though he's passed away. Whether it's his official website or whether it was somebody who's nicked his name and set a website up, but there's quite a lot of stories there, and a lot of the stories overlap. Anyway.
So this is where
the overlap where this seems like there's two different stories that are sort of pieced together, how they actually met. And because when we get to the part that Ray was in the army, it'll come clear what I'm on about. But this is the studio where they released or made this first song, this album, mini album, with six songs. You can see that Moonlight Drive's one of the famous songs is on there. So on September the 2nd, 1965, the band Rick and the Ravens entered the World Pacific Studios in Los Angeles and recorded 6 songs that would eventually become Doors songs: Moonlight Drive, My Eyes Have Seen You, Hello, I Love You, Go Insane, simply known as Insane on the Acetate, End of the Night, and Summer's Almost Gone. The recording session was a relatively quick affair, lasting 3 hours in total. This is off their official...
to put the old album down. To
put 6 songs out. Well, that's off Wikipedia. That's on there. That's on Wikipedia. That so that's as true as whatever it is.
I think they're beating Beatles there, aren't they, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, this is
recording speed.
What I was wondering though is these 6 songs that they did, were they ever released prior to the Doors doing them?
Yeah, well, the story goes that the 1965 lineup. These are some of the that lady there was the bass player. Now you were talking about, did they have studio musicians in there? Yeah. Apparently, they had quite a lot of musicians playing there. The lineup with Jim Morrison and Ray Manzarek and John Densmore and Rick Manzarek on guitar and Jim Manzarek on harmonica, and this lady here, Pat Sullivan, was on bass guitar. She was quite famous apparently as some sort of session musician. So. No Robbie Krieger at this point, by the way.
So they're saying that they did 6 songs in 3 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm calling bullshit.
Yeah. The only way that could possibly happen is either the songs were pre-recorded coming in and they came in and sang the vocals, and so they spent that time singing vocals, or they had crack studio musicians doing the recording. So in other words, the sheet music was placed in front of the studio players and they were able to bang it out. But 6 songs in 3 hours is tough to swallow because, like we were talking before we got started here, it really means that everything went flawlessly. There were no mistakes, very few takes. And, maybe you can get by with that from the instrumental perspective, especially if you have some ringers as the studio musicians. But when you get to the vocals, that becomes a different story. Vocals can take a lot of time, depending upon how much quality you're looking for. If you're just going to run through them and not be concerned about phrasing or whether you're singing flat or sharp, I guess you can just breeze through it. But I'm going to bet that was not the case. Mm. So it's a very, let's put it this way, 6 songs in 3 hours is highly suspect. Highly.
Even if they're a band that's been around for a long time, 6 songs in 3 or 4 hours is probably impossible.
Yeah, the thing is, there's a lot of stories like that. I introduced it to a lot of people with Rubber Soul, 16 songs in 30 days. But when you listen to a lot of these rock documentaries and they go back and talk about these bands, there's lots of stories where songs just fell out of the ceiling, landed in their lap, and they were able to bang them out in no time. Where they, it was one where I forgot what song it was. Neil Young said, he went into the woods, was out there for a couple of hours, played his guitar, came back, and he was ready to record the song. Now, I'm not going to say that can't happen, but there's a lot of stories like that. And those stories are put together in order to build up the myth and the backstory about the band. It's that whole thing. Remember when you showed the Doors trailer and they flashed across the screen, genius. So what I found with a lot of these narratives is there's this push to elevate these people to status of genius, that it's almost like they have superhuman abilities. There's something magical about them that you and I don't have, and it's part of the whole idol worship. It's to develop that so that you worship these people and so on.
And also telling you that you're useless. You'll never do what this genius can do.
Exactly. But just to digress a little bit, that's the exact point I brought up with the Beatles. The Beatles story has set in the minds of far superior musicians and songwriters than the Beatles were, that those songwriters and musicians who have the superior ability will never achieve the status or the abilities of the Beatles. They'll always play second fiddle. And that's, that's intentional. That's the kind of, to get you to take a back seat, and it keeps the musicians and the songwriters saying, "Oh, I just wish that I could just be like McCartney and Lennon and write songs like they did." It's kind of deflates the person. It deflates their right, their aspirations, and it pulls the rung out of what they're truly capable of. And that's something that I think is really
demoralizing to them.
It's demoralizing, and it's a big downside, but that's part, I'm convinced that it's part of the psychology of how they do this.
And also, Mike, they do it in the film world, they do it in the art world, they do it in every little creative world that there is. There's a character that you'll never achieve what they've achieved.
Right.
If you look at the Marvel films now, the superhero films, look how jacked these guys are.
Yeah.
And you've got kids watching them thinking, how do I get like that, mummy, daddy? And,
right.
Well, take a lot of drugs for starters, but
right.
He's basically saying you will never be this. And I mean, because they're in, they have to work out just before they do a take. It's that in depth. They're not, more about this than me, Don, but they give the impression just walk around that all the time.
It's funny too. A lot of these films where you see these actors, they're all buffed up, and they are buffed up prior to filming. In other words, there's a whole routine that they have to go through. And then once the movie's over and it's done, they're not buffed up anymore. I've seen that so many times.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's another illusion that's presented and put out there. I don't know. The whole thing is just, I
mean, what we just talked about there, like it's a psychological operation to make you feel bad about yourself, in general. But think of poor women, what they have to put up with.
Yes.
With all, I mean, yeah.
Well, they do that with women all the time.
Worse than we do.
All the time, they want women to feel, I'll never look like that.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it is horrible. And also, even going back to the beginning of this and the other presentations and stuff that you've done over the last whatever decade, Mike, why are all these psychologists or psychiatrists or the CIA, why are they involved in any of this? Why are they anywhere near this? If this was a organic, creative happening, why do they need to be involved?
Right. That's because it's not organic.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the simple answer. It's not organic. And there are people that will comment to me and on my channels when I talk about the counterculture. They are convinced that the counterculture was an organic movement. And I'm like, no, it was not organic.
Even if there were organic components, they would have been controlled. So it's not organic anymore.
Well, the thing is, the organic aspect of it, if you want to call it organic, is the people following the Pied Piper, right? So they have Pied Pipers that lead them down the road. And then there's this whole jump on the bandwagon bit, and that's what people consider to be organic. But it's not organic, because the Pied Pipers that you follow and that you worship, these people are manufactured entities. And they're manufactured by the social scientists of the deep state out of organizations like Tavistock, with ideology that goes back to the Frankfurt School. And, you've got the Club of Rome, and we can go on and on and on. So it's very difficult for people to get their heads wrapped around the fact that this is how movements and cultures are developed. If you didn't have these social scientists, there would have been no counterculture.
No. And through all these art forms, especially music, they make out that they can be creative while they're taking drugs or drunk out the brains.
Yeah.
Life doesn't work like that, does it? I'm afraid.
No. I've had that comment come up many times. Well, taking drugs makes you more creative. No, it does not. Sex and drugs and rock and roll is another psychological operation to make you believe that taking drugs, drinking alcohol, especially in excess, is going to make you a better musician or a better songwriter. It does not. In fact, what I tell people is, if that were the case, how come so many bands that were into drugs and alcohol had to clean themselves up? They had to go to rehab to pull themselves out of that ditch. It's interesting, in the memoirs of Billy Shears, Billy talks about that there is no drugs and alcohol when he's recording and he's doing studio work and all of that. I mean, it's clean as a whistle because everybody has to be on top of their game. You can't have some guy who's sloppy drunk or is high sitting in the corner thinking that he's going to, he's going to run through his guitar riffs. That's not going to happen.
If anyone's ever met a heroin addict, an alcoholic, and tell me if they can actually function correctly.
No.
Their only function in life is to get another drink or another hit.
I knew a guy that had a heroin addiction. He was a good guy, but he got himself really, really mixed up in heroin. And you're exactly right, Dom. All they're looking for is their next fix. Always in search of it.
Yep.
It's a horrible thing to see and to witness, but that's the reality of it. It's not the picture that the pop culture has painted. Not at all.
Also, do these guys in these pictures here, Rick and the Ravens, look like, well, especially Ray Manzarek, they don't really look like future Doors. You're talking here 1965, by the way, so you're not long pre-Doors. So they, in answer to your question, both Jim and Rick Manzarek were disappointed with the response to that demo that it received after attempting to promote it. And they, along with the lady who was the bass player, Pat Sullivan, were additionally not impressed with Morrison's songs. Subsequently, Rick and Jim Manzarek quit their band, stating they felt it was going nowhere fast.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Morrison's songs, it's always been sketchy and suspect about Jim Morrison actually writing songs. I mean, there's stories about him showing up at Laurel Canyon. He's got a stack of songs. So to the best of my knowledge, you guys can correct me, did Jim Morrison even play an instrument?
No, he couldn't play an instrument.
Right. So how are you writing songs? I can see maybe where you're writing lyrics.
Well, they sell him as a poet, don't they? That's in the film as well.
I mean, what did he hum the tunes? I don't know. It's just very weird, and I could sit there and I can dissect it forever. But
well, I mean, Bernie Taupin wrote for Elton John, but I think Bernie Taupin can actually play. And I might be wrong there. So
Bernie wrote the lyrics, right?
Yeah,
and Elton was responsible for the music. At least that's that's the narrative. So, but when they say Jim Morrison had songs, well, songs implies to me that you've got lyrics and you've got the actual music.
Well, Robbie Krieger actually is down as writing most of the hits.
Yeah,
or a lot of the hits. It seems that he was the musician that was brought in after. He was the. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
But they sell him as a poet, don't they? But a poem's not.
That's what I had heard too.
Yeah.
Now the point I'm trying to make is that there had to be an aspect of it where the music was brought in. When I talk about the music, I mean the actual instrumental, right? The melody, the music, and all that stuff. And I don't think that was Jim Morrison. So when people say, "Well, Jim Morrison had all of these songs," unless he sat down with somebody and. He wrote the lyrics and they wrote the music, and then he presented that, the music and the lyrics together. Then he had lyrics.
To me, writing a song means you're coming up with all of it. You're composing the actual song as well as the lyrics.
Right, and that's why the process takes long. Songwriting can take, it depends. Some songs you can write the lyrics and the music, and it comes quickly. I've had that happen to me. Other times, you could start a song and you won't put that song together for months. You kind of get stuck. You don't like the way, maybe you could change the melody. You're not really happy with the chord progression.
And even sometimes lyrics, you can put songs together, can't you? You wrote a song 6 months ago and you think, well, that chorus might fit if I can just work it. So they don't just all go smooth, do they? And not only that, these guys are writing hit after hit after hit.
Yes.
To write one hit, you've got to write probably 20 songs, 50 songs, to get one that's actually goes on an album, let alone becomes a hit.
Right. There's a lot of starts and stops.
Yeah. And these people... I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, it does take effort to write a song, and you could try to write 4 or 5 songs before you hit one that you think to yourself, okay, well, you know what? I think this one will work. And the other 4 get put on a shelf, or maybe the other four, like you were saying, Dom, maybe there's a chorus or the melody that you kind of like, but it's not together yet. So you kind of shelve that and you keep it for a rainy day. Maybe a couple of months down the line, I'll revisit that. But it's not this instantaneous, simultaneous process. It's just not.
No. And anyway, so Ray Manzarek is the interesting character. After graduating from DePaul University in 1960, he was born in 1939. If I remember, so he was 21 going back to 22 going back to 1961. Mike, Rick and the Ravens were formed in 1961. Ray Manzarek enrolled after leaving DePaul from Chicago in UCLA. After a few weeks of classes, Ray knew he wasn't cut out to be a lawyer, so he'd left DePaul to become a lawyer, even though he was into film and things like this, and decided to enlist in the military. The official military story is that Ray served in Thailand and Okinawa, playing piano for his fellow troops whenever he could. After completing his service, Ray would return to UCLA and enroll in film school. But like all the other stuff, there's conflicting stories. One thing is for sure, Ray did join the army in 1961, and he wasn't drafted, he joined on his own accord. Apparently, he turned up he was drunk in New York, and he went into an army recruitment office. That's the story.
Okay.
So Ray Manzarek, in his pre-Dawes era, future keyboard player Ray Manzarek was in the highly selective Army Security Agency as a prospective intelligence analyst. So I'll say it again. He joined the Army Security Agency as a prospective intelligence analyst.
Right. Yep. I mean, that's, the pool of recruitment for that has to be very, very selective.
No, Mike, what he got drunk and he went and
he showed up drunk, like, you are going to go into intelligence.
I found him.
Yeah. So he got drunk, walked into an army recruitment agency to become a grunt. After leaving UCLA the first time, he didn't want to be a lawyer. So he's quite educated, this guy, to go to UCLA to become a lawyer, to get accepted into there. Yeah. Left there because he didn't like it. Ended up in New York drunk and just walked into a recruitment center to become a grunt in the army.
Seems like someone somewhere were working out what they needed him to do next.
Yeah.
If we put old Ray, he can play a few instruments. Maybe a band.
It sounds like another fabricated backstory, obviously. This is what they do. They create these backstories. There's a mythology that's built all around it. And it's because they're it's to sell it to the public. Typically, what I see a lot of the times is this whole rags to riches storyline that is attached to so many of these artists and these musicians and these bands. Oh, they started here and, they were really, down and out, but look what happened. They don't tell you the part where there's a machine behind them. That gets left out.
Well, even the modern stars, there's a band called Mumford & Sons. You might have heard Mumford & Sons. It's an English band. They play a lot of banjos and stuff. It's quite American style, I suppose the Westerny style folk singing. And Winston Marshall, who was in that, his father, Sir Paul Marshall, is a hedge fund manager. Their business, him and his business partner, they're worth £1.6 billion together. And they're funding a lot of the far-right movement in the UK, the pro-Israel stuff and what have you in the UK. So he's in Mumford & Sons and people are screaming and crying when he used to play for them and going and watching and buying their albums, not knowing that his dad's some far-right funder. And he funds the Just Stop Oil movement as well.
Yeah.
All the shenanigans.
And again, so this Army Security Agency... The director of that in the 1960s was the highest ranking official in the NSA.
Nice logo, by the way.
Yes. And in 1960 to 62, it would have been Rear Admiral Lawrence U. Frost. He probably knew Jim Morrison's dad. And he was definitely known his great uncle, because Jim Morrison's great uncle was actually a full-blown admiral, and he was buried at Arlington Cemetery with state honours, full military honours. Yeah. So Ray was in the army, but not just an army. One of our listeners sent something in. I'll just wind this on a bit. So this blog website gave quite a lot of interesting information. Can you remember, Chris?
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
So listeners sent this in, and that's what we get. I've got a lot of good researchers out there, and I'm sure you do, Mike, sending good information in that can send you off in a totally different track. And this guy wrote, called Britt Leach. He has a website, BrittLeach.com. He wrote a blog called In the Army with Ray, and it was written in 2014, the year after Manzarek had died. And Britt Leach said that Ray Manzarek Jr. Were both in the army together, and they were posted on Okinawa Island in Japan between 1961 and 1962 in the Army Security Agency. And in the blog, he writes that Ray joined up because he wanted to study film and art of the cinema, but Ray said he was conned into joining. Manzarek says he had a few drinks in New York Times Square and just wandered into the Army Recruitment Center, and the recruitment sergeant told him that the Army would be a great place to study film by enlisting and requesting for an assignment in the Army Signal Corps, where they would give him a camera. So Ray Manzarek signed up there and then.
Yeah. No, like I'll think about it. Let me sleep on that, okay?
Yeah,
You're gonna I think it's got to be a little bit more than just giving me a camera.
Yeah. Ray was 22 years old. In 96. No mention of who he was with that night, by the way. Had he gone to New York on his own? Was he with a group of friends? Right. I mean, do you just go to New York and wander into a recruitment center?
If he's drinking alone, that's a problem in itself.
Exactly. Who spiked his drink? Apparently, Manzarek said the recruitment sergeant lied to him and didn't sign him up to the Army Signal Corps. Instead, Ray ended up on the Japanese island of Okinawa.
That was a rough night out, wasn't it? That was a rough night
out. So this is a secret base, a listening base, and they don't just let you in there, do they? And this Britt Leach goes on to say that they were cleared by the CIA, the FBI, the National Security Agency, all of the three-letter agencies had cleared them for security. But the story goes that he wouldn't sign the documents. So he ended up on this island and he wouldn't sign the documents to clear him to go into, which again, it just sounds like a nonsense story. So
he's in the military and he's telling his superiors that he's not going to sign documents.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. He'd wind up in the brig.
Yeah. Well, this is apparently what happened, Mike. He said he had to sign a security clearance document that probably bound him for secrecy for life. And Ray told him he wouldn't sign because he had Polish ancestry. And in the 60s, Poland was a communist country. And by signing the secrecy agreement, he wouldn't be able to visit Poland. Laughable.
His superior would say, I don't care whether you could see your family or not. It's funny. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. Actually, it was the Air National Guard. I went to boot camp and all this stuff. When I was in boot camp, I'm going back a long time ago, 45 years ago. They made it very clear that you don't have very many choices. It's not like the outside world. When you're in there, they've got you, And so the probability that he was going to have a debate with a superior officer about signing some documents, I mean, the superior officer could have said, well, if you're not going to sign them, then, they're going to send him off to some job where he's going to shovel shit in a barn somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know this really doesn't make sense.
And also,
been in the
they take him all the way to Japan for him not to sign the documents.
Right. Exactly. And what am I going to Japan for? Don't worry about it. We'll tell you when you get
when
there.
You sober up. So he's been cleared by the CIA. So he hadn't just gone to Poland. He's been cleared by all this. I mean, this doesn't sound remotely plausible.
No.
But he actually said that Ray didn't look military, right? He didn't look military at any time. He had long blonde hair, not rock and roll. This is what this Brett Leach has written. Not rock and roll long, but long. He had a mustache, handlebar thing, that didn't speak bicycles built for two or barbershop quartets, but rather the criminal motorcycle gangs of the Cossacks or a Cossack. So he's saying he had a defiant mustache. Yeah. This is on a military base.
Right.
They'd have just got you and shaved your hair off, I'm sure.
Absolutely. The first thing they do when you go to basic training is they shave all your hair on your head, you know, and you get issued a uniform. They put a cap on your head. So this sounds to me like they had him set up for some kind of intelligence operation.
It also said here that because he wouldn't sign this document, he was placed in what they call a casual platoon on Tory Station. So on this island, he was placed in a casual platoon, trying to get him to change his mind. And while he was in there, this is when he grew his hair long and had his full Cossack mustache.
Why would you change your mind if you're in a casual platoon? I have different ways to change your mind, and it would be going to a casual platoon.
So do you know,
exactly. In the 60s.
This was 1961, Chris.
They wouldn't have been quite as soft as they are now, if you imagine. In the 60s, no. The military would have been a bit less understanding of your viewpoint, I would imagine, in them days.
Look, I'm going to give you and it's my opinion, you know, there is no way that the military would have put up with this.
No.
They would have put him somewhere where he would have regretted not signing those documents.
Yeah. So the story goes that this Britt Leach said that to get him to change his mind, so he'd grown his hair long, by the way, so he turned himself into a hippie in 1961, right?
Before they existed,
right? And they sent him off to Laos. So it sent him off to Laos as punishment for a short time. But Britt also said that Manzarek, while he was in Laos, wrote to him, and he described to him that he was growing herbs in Laos.
That's what he was doing?
Meaning drugs, yes.
Yeah.
Smuggled them back into the US after he was discharged.
But yeah.
I mean, this is starting to build up yeah.
No.
It puts a different emphasis on when you hear that organ sound now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So he were over there basically setting up a drug factory.
Well, he were over there going into character by the looks of it, to me.
And he was trafficking drugs.
Oh, yes. To start trafficking drugs into
while in the army.
Yeah.
That sounds like a CIA operation to me.
Well, he's in the intelligence agency. Yeah. So there's anyway. So that's a strange story, to say the least, isn't it?
Yep.
How long? Do you know if you join up, Mike? How long are you in the? I mean, how long are you in the army for? Do you sign up for a year, 2 years, 3 years?
4-year stint,
right?
For me. So I did 4 years. I was in the Air National Guard, and so you do regular military Air Force boot camp. I was in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and after that, you do your National Guard stint, which is I think it was every other weekend and 2 weeks a year of active duty. But what wound up happening with me is I ended up toward the latter part of it getting a job on the base as a federal technician. So I ended up working there for a short period of time, full time. But when you're full time, you're still wearing your Air Force fatigues, your uniform. So but I think the minimum, at least back then, probably would have been, and I'm taking a guess here based upon my own experience, would have been a 4-year signing up.
So Ray was in the army from 1961 to 1962.
He did 2 years. I don't know. Maybe the army had a different.
It kind of wouldn't be worth training you, though, would it? For 2 years, it wouldn't be financially.
Not in that elite type of.
Didn't he refuse to cut his hair and shave his tash off as well? Is that right?
They allowed him to grow it in that casuals because he refused to sign the official whatever it was the sign off. But I mean, you said that they'd got him to sign that before he went out. Sure.
But also military in them days were short back and sides and no facial hair. I'm pretty sure. How would he got away with not doing that, no matter where he was?
Well, they own your ass, don't they, when you go in military? That's it. Simple.
Yes, simple as that. It's not your whole persona and what you think you could do is completely gone. Once you're in the military, it's a whole different set of rules. In fact, in the United States, it's a military code of justice. You don't have the laws that govern on the outside. Once you're in the military, it's a completely different ball of wax, completely different.
I mean, this looks like a sheep dipping exercise, doesn't it?
Yes, it
it's
does.
got the sounding of it, and it reminded me of Lee Harvey Oswald's story. He was working on a Japanese base as well. This was slightly before, and again, the different roles that people are given to play in these. I don't know if you've heard this story about this guy, this Wendell Thornley. Have you heard of Wendell Thornley?
No.
I came across this. I'd never heard of it, and I thought I'd read pretty much everything about Lee Harvey Oswald. But yeah, so Lee Harvey, you don't mind me veering off a little bit, do you?
No, not at all.
Lee Harvey Oswald was also working at a Japanese base in the late, but this was in the late 1950s. Oswald's training was at the secret radar operations similar to Manzarek's, which required security clearance. A May 1957 document stated that Oswald was granted final clearance to handle classified matter, up to and including confidential, after careful check of local records had disclosed no derogatory data. He was given military occupational speciality of aviation electronics operator. And in 1959, Oswald met a guy called Kerry Wendell Thornley, a future author who was also in the Marine Corps. He is also known as a co-founder of Discordianism, a cult. Thornley was also known as Omar K.M. Ravenhurst, or simply Lord Omar. Raised a Mormon, Thornley shifted his ideological focus frequently in rivalry with serious countercultural figures of the 1960s. And this sounds like a counter-culture operation. Yeah. So he closely scrutinized throughout his life atheism, anarchism, objectivism, neo-paganism, Buddhism. So he's actually going against all these things and confusing everything and writing books. He was actually interviewed. I'll get to this bit. Oswald was discharged from the Marines on the 11th of September 1959, aged 19. He left for the Soviet Union. September 11th, 1959.
Yeah.
Kendall Thornley is known for his manuscript, The Idle Warriors, which was based on the activities of his acquaintance with the then unknown Lee Harvey Oswald. He wrote this in 1962. So he'd written a book called The Idle Warriors in 1962 about Lee Harvey Oswald 12 months before JFK.
Yeah, that's another coincidence, Tom.
Talk about making a history. He wrote a book about him.
This is just unbelievable. It really is.
September
11th, you said 1959, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
September 11th date. Yeah. And before, I think I said the military code of justice. Right. So in the military, I don't know what I said there, but just in case anybody's like, "Oh, you said the wrong thing," because somebody will correct myself.
Yeah. Well, but Wendell Thornley was interviewed by the Warren Commission, and they subpoenaed his manuscript for this book and locked it away in the National Archives, and it remained unpublished until 1991.
Interesting.
So, yeah, very interesting. Yeah. And Thornley was a friend of E. Howard Hunt, the Watergate CIA guy, who told him in the 1960s that the subsequent emergence of Charles Manson and what would become of his cult. So E. Howard Hunt had told Wendell Thornley, apparently, so Wendell Thornley said, of the emergence of Charles Manson, which, if anybody's read the book Chaos by Tom O'Neill, it's an interesting read. He's sort of shown what we all sort of thought and knew prior to it, that Manson was some kind of MK Ultra operative.
Yes.
Whether all that was real or not, I don't know. But
I did hear a funny thing when I was listening to some stuff about Jim Morrison. Apparently, he was questioned over the Manson murders. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Whether it's more of the myth building, but yeah, that was in one. Apparently, he was questioned over Manson, and rumor had it he talked about it before it happened. But again, I don't know if that's true or not.
And Morrison was in that whole Laurel Canyon scene. Yeah. Charles Manson was part of that Laurel Canyon scene.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so they mentioned it.
And E. Howard Hunt heavily involved in the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And there were rumors he knocked around with some of Manson's girls and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a big place, is it? I guess.
No. So Oswald's genealogy definitely doesn't disappoint either. I traced his origins back to Anjou in France, to the first millennia. Yeah. So he's got he's related to the King of West Francia. So he's a Frankist. It was Oswald's bloodline. Viking leader Rollo, who had settled in the Duchy of Normandy. I mentioned this before. The Bushes are related to this Rollo Ralverston, who's nicknamed the Walker, and obviously Herbert Walker Bush. The Walkers were part of the Bushes. And he ruled Normandy. Guess what year he got the dukedom in Normandy? 9/11.
Yeah.
So he was... Honestly, and people will say, again, they'll say it's just a coincidence, but it's called Walker, and it was on 9/11. But yeah, anyway, I just thought it was an interesting. The Bushes are also related to the Knights Templar, Plantagenet bloodlines, etc., etc. Should do a genealogy and all these people program at some point.
We don't have enough. We don't have enough time in our lives, Dom.
So
oh boy,
how did they meet then? Again, we're told on this website, this is the Ray Manzarek meeting. The doors began with a chance meeting between acquaintances Jim Morrison and Ray Manzarek on Venice Beach in July 1965, and it all happened in the blink of an eye. That's what we're told.
Yep.
Yeah. The band minus Krieger, as I said, recorded 6 numbers on an acetate in September the 2nd, 1965. So it happened pretty quickly after that, the fame side of it for them. As soon as they disbanded the band, that Rick and the Ravens, and they said, we're going to start the Doors up, it sort of happened overnight.
Yeah.
Like somebody flicked a switch and it happened.
Well, that's because everything before that was boot camp. It's like when I talk about the Beatles in Hamburg, people, well, what about Hamburg? Hamburg was boot camp. It was handling, it was grooming. It was to get them to a point where the deep state or their handlers felt that they were ready to go to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what happens is most of the time, most people will only focus on the fact that the story that Morrison and Ray met on Venice Beach in July of 1965, and then it was just magic. It just magically came together, right? And it's the same thing like when I looked at the Beatles. Nobody really digs into what really went on before 62, 63. Like what was really going on. And most people with the Beatles will focus on the Beatlemania and the Beatles coming to the United States in February of 1964, but pay very little attention to any of the history prior to that.
Mm.
So this is another pattern that I see whenever they create these stories about these bands. Yeah. There's a point in time, and after that, it was just wow.
It's strange, isn't it? Because the Monkees, whether they made the songs or not, made some decent songs, right? But nobody argues that the Monkees weren't a band that were just made up.
No, that's because it was up front. They said they were a made-up TV band, and they did not write their songs. Well, they wrote some of their songs later on, especially like Mike Nesmith and Peter Tork. But generally speaking, no, the vast majority of their songs were written.
Do you think they were put into that music particular time to detract from other bands being made up? It's because the spotlight was on them as a made-up band. That mean all the other bands were organic type of thing, or meant to?
Yeah, I think the Monkees were actually created because before them, there was no counterculture band on TV, right? So I always looked at it as they were created in order to exploit the television media. You know, all the other bands were playing live concerts or stuff like that. That's how I kind of viewed the Monkees. I think that the Monkees were manufactured exclusively for television so that they can pump in the music of the counterculture and the whole look and all that stuff into the living rooms of people's homes, on a consistent basis for as long as the series ran.
Yeah,
that's just my view.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I'll read this off Manzarek's website about how they met.
Yeah,
it was 1965, and it was summer, and school was finished. Now we had to do something. What are we going to do with our life, or your life? About 2 months later, sometime in July, sitting on Venice Beach, who comes walking down the beach but Jim Morrison? This is Manzarek talking. I said, "Hey man, I thought you were in New York." He said, "No, I decided to stay here. I've been writing some songs and some poems and living up on Dennis Jacobs' rooftop." So I said, let me hear some of those songs. Can you sing some for me? Remember, Jim didn't play music or write poetry, and he didn't actually like singing, apparently. So he sat down on the beach and said, "Okay, here's one I've got, Moonlight Drive." And when I heard the first lines, "Let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide," I said, "Wow, that's it. We need to get a rock and roll band together." Remember, Rick and the Ravens were already together. And he said, "Ray, that's exactly what I had in mind." I said to him, "You can come and live with me and Dorothy," Ray's other half, "at our apartment up on Fraser while we work out the songs." So what we're going to call the band, Jim says, The Doors.
Done. Done and dusted.
So the timeline is that in July 1965, he'd written a poem, stroke songs, without music. Rick and the Ravens went to the studio in September 1965, so that's 2 or 3 months, and recorded 6 songs with Jim singing.
Yeah. That's the 6 songs in 3 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Dennis Jacob, he was on his roof. Apparently, the famous story is that he spent all summer writing poems, taking LSD and eating beans out of a can.
It's not really what would get you, inspire you to start writing decent songs and poetry.
Yeah, he wrote some beans. I think Dennis Jacob was. So the guy Britt Leach, that blog that he wrote, he became like an actor apart. If you look him up online, anybody, you'll see that he's actually an actor. So Britt Leach is an actor, and Dennis Jacob was some kind of music. He made like film scores. I think he did the score for the Doors film, Chris.
Britt Leach was played by Michael Madsen in the film.
Right. Okay.
Right. He was apparently a bit of a bum actor, and he always getting Jim Morrison into trouble.
But he didn't even know Jim Morrison. Britt Leach might be Dennis Jacob you're on about.
Sorry, he was an actor anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, but Jacob is a film editor known for Apocalypse Now and The Doors.
Right. What about the producers are Rothschild? Is he an actual Rothschild, or is he just called?
It was spelt differently, so whether he's an actual Rothschild, I couldn't find any.
Did it? It was Rothschild, wasn't it?
Yeah. It does ring alarm bells, and he lived at Lookout Mountain apparently.
Did he? He was in the film as well. He had a cameo in the film as well.
Right. Go on, sorry.
No, I'm going to say, Dom, on that little bit you flashed, they even look a lot smarter than the persona that they're sending out, don't they? Even with these leather pants on and stuff. You know what I mean? They look brand new, don't they?
I mean, that's a touched up video, is that? I couldn't obviously play it on here because there's definitely copyright on that, but that was their first singing debut live on TV, The Ed Sullivan Show, 1967. So every other live performance on TV was dubbed. They were miming, lip syncing. Yeah, that was the first ever live performance, apparently.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm looking at that set, and I thought to myself, that's a very elaborate set.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of planning.
Yeah.
That went behind them appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show. So anytime I see stuff like that, this is a very highly choreographed
delivery system.
Exactly. Yeah, delivery system. That's a great choice of words. Yep. And when I say they play live and stuff like that, maybe the singing was live. We have a lot of times backing tracks were used, contrary to what they might be saying, to ensure that they were able to get through the songs without any flubs or whatever, bad notes, bad chords, or whatnot. But they could have played live. I'm just saying that I don't trust these stories when they say things like that. I really don't. But a lot of times they could have had the singer sing live. And especially if Morrison was going to be put in a position where he was going to say something that they said, "Oh, you can't say that."
Yeah, I think I watched a bit of him singing this live, and he does sound like he's singing it live. I think.
Yeah, it could very well be that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now we're talking about it, I might as well talk about it, but it was the famous one where he apparently sang words that they didn't want him to sing higher, even though it's a big part of the song. Yeah.
Yes.
They showed it in the trailer, didn't they? Where
he
goes, the camera goes higher.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is the instrumental backing track could have been playing and the rest of the band was miming to that. But they gave him the microphone and he sang live to the backing track with the rest of the band miming. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. There's so many variations of that, isn't there? Lip syncing isn't necessarily, or the vocals are turned down and you're singing over the top of them. A lot of the female singers, the stars, do that, don't they? And the males, like Backstreet Boys, they'll have the song playing and they're singing over it to make the voice sound bigger or more fuller.
Right.
But his style of singing as well was kind of a, not
poetry.
But not a perfect. He didn't have a perfect voice. So the grumbles in his voice were kind of part of his sound, weren't they?
But even it's difficult to tell whether he was singing live because obviously it's been touched up that, and when they've edited the thing, he's sort of singing after the music, and it doesn't. But that doesn't mean to say he's miming, by the way. It just means to say it's not a good copy. But the Ed Sullivan Show released a lot of these 60s performers. I was reading the Beatles, Presley before them, Rolling Stones, The Doors, Supremes, The Animals, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Dusty Springfield, The Beach Boys, yada, 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 Mamas and Papas, Herman's Hermits. All of these people were launched really onto the Ed Sullivan Show.
And they gave the impression that he kind of discovered them, didn't they? That was kind of...
Yeah. It's interesting, if you look above Robbie Krieger's head, the guitar player, look at the door above him. Is that an all-seeing eye in between the panes?
It definitely looks like it, doesn't it?
It does look like that, right?
But it is CBS as well, so...
Yes.
So
even the one on the left, the red one on the left, was we can't quite see the top of it. That looks a bit eye-like as well.
Wouldn't surprise. But I was saying earlier on, wasn't it, Mike, that there was a system in play called videotape delay system. Yeah. So when they're playing live, you hear it on radio shows where they cut somebody off because they've been swearing or whatever it might be. If that really famous part where they told him not to sing higher was really there, they could have used this system, which was there being used by CBS at that point. So that's nonsense anyway.
Yeah,
that's nonsense. So Robbie Krieger is an interesting guy because he wrote a lot of the songs that and these are the songs that he wrote. Apparently, some of the famous songs that the Doors sung. So it wasn't just Jim Morrison writing songs. You would have needed a musician to come up with the riffs and the harmonies and the melodies and things like that. If you've got somebody who doesn't like singing or can't sing and who just writes poetry, is going to need some major help.
That's what I was saying before.
Yeah,
he would need a guy like Robbie to come along and say, okay, let me see your lyrics and let me see what I could do musically to put the music behind the lyrics. So that's how it would work.
And Robbie Krieger and Densmore and Manzarek met at one of the Transcendental movement meetings. That's how they met. And they actually said without the Maharishi or whatever he was, there would be no Doors. That was not including Jim Morrison. That were them three. I think it was Robert Krieger that said that. And Robert Krieger, obviously his dad, Stu Krieger, worked for Northrop Grumman, the fifth largest weapons contractor in the US. Just to throw that one in there. I think that was Dave McGowan that came up with that one, wasn't it? I can't take credit for that. So I found out, this is how this research, and you'll know this, Mike, that keeps you up at night sometimes when you find one of these little cracks in the doors, so to speak. James Douglas Morrison is a direct descendant of Clan Douglas. The Dukes of Hamilton, not the Dukes of Hazzard, the Dukes of Hamilton are the current holders of the Dukes of Douglas and the Marquis, whatever you want to call it. I got bollocked by somebody for that the other week, pronounced it wrong. the Marquess of Douglas. So the Marquess of Douglas, making Douglas Hamilton, the 14th Duke of Hamilton, a bloodline cousin of Jim's.
Okay. So, and to remind the audience, Stacy, who did the research on my channel, my colleague, determined that the Douglas Hamiltons, from Billy Shear's perspective, would be the bloodline on his father's side, and the Percys would be the bloodline on Billy's mother's side.
Yeah.
So
Elizabeth Percy, weren't it? Yeah.
Elizabeth Percy, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the Dukes of Hamilton, whose family name is Douglas Hamilton, obviously. So I often wondered, when I saw Douglas, it kept appearing in the genealogy and the research into Jim Morrison. And all these people are important, and some of them inherited a title called the Crosby Estates in Scotland. And that made me think of David Crosby, because he'd already come up in some of the research as well in Scotland, being linked back to the Knights Templar and things like that, as is Jim, as we'll see next time. But yeah, it's interesting. But even David Crosby's descendants go deeper than first thought. Masons, generals, mayors, senators, founding fathers, signatories on the Declaration. He's descendant of the Livingston families and the Van Rensselaer families. And he's also, I think William the Conqueror was his, 30th, 6th or something, great-grandfather. But yeah, it's all interesting stuff, in it.
It's very interesting, Dom and Chris. This is really great work.
It's interesting to talk about. I quite like this because it lifts the manhole cover off the nonsense that we've been told.
Yes. It's reality is an illusion. It's just a big puppet show. And but unfortunately, many people don't want to give up the fairy tales.
No.
Because it makes them feel good. They grew up with it, they love it, and they don't want to be told that what you believe is not the truth. They don't want to hear it.
No.
There's a small segment of the population, obviously, that does, but I'm talking about the vast majority of the population. I bump up against it all the time.
Yeah, I bet you get some right grief. One of Crosby's grandfathers, Stephen Van Rensselaer, I think he's called, the third, 1764 to 1830 or something like that. He's Crosby's fourth great-grandfather, US landowner, businessman, politician, militia officer. He was given sort of inflation, compound inflation, if you like. He would be today the 10th richest American if he was alive today, of all time. That's how rich he was.
Yep.
That takes away the hippie type of dream idea of giving everything up. And Van Rensselaer was also the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of New York.
Yeah.
And they've got their own lodge as well, Lodge 8051 or so. Anyway, whatever it is, in New York.
Yeah, you mentioned, Don, about them giving up the whole hippie movement and the counterculture and all that stuff. We saw that as time elapsed, where rock music became more and more, it became corporate rock, big corporate arenas, corporate sponsorships. And then when we got to the whole 2020 event deal with COVID, we had all of these bands, many of these bands that go back to the 60s, like the Rolling Stones, Billy, talking about, hey, put a mask on and take the shot.
Yeah. Mick Jagger did a song about it. He actually made a song.
Right. So where was the anti-establishment ideology there? Well, it wasn't there.
I just think of the power they had over that generation, Mike.
Yeah.
The favorite pop stars telling them to get it.
Yeah. Yep. So, but this is great, Dom and Chris. And when do you think part 2 might be available? I don't want to push you or anything. I'm just asking.
Well, I've got a lot of the work. It might take me another month or so. It might be January or something like that. Yeah.
That's great.
So,
yep.
Sometime in January, I think.
That'd be fantastic.
Have some of that ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on, Mike. Brilliant.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, guys. Anytime.